Larry the Cable Guy was at the top of his game. He was once the king of comedy and was known for his saying, "Get outdone." He was always on stage, TV, and in movies. It was impossible to get enough of his comedy albums and TV shows, and he became a beloved character in Pixar's Cars movies. But there was something going on behind the fame. Larry made a choice that shocked everyone because he was tired of playing all the time, and his body was breaking down. Why did he leave everything? This is a tale. The changing face of comedy, Larry the Cable Guy became a comedy star with his bold, over-the-top character, which hit home with a certain group of fans. People all over the world knew him for his unique redneck jokes and over-the-top personality. But as time went on, the humor scene changed. The people who used to go crazy for his shows started to watch new comics with fresh, new styles. Larry's well-known act used to be a surefire way to get people to laugh, but now there are new comedians whose acts appeal to a wider range of tastes. This left Larry to face a new and unsure reality in the comedy world. Soon, comedians like Bo Burnham and Hannah Gadsby became the new faces of comedy. They brought something new and personal to the stage. They told personal stories, thought about themselves, and put a lot of emphasis on social problems in their performances. These artists didn't just make people laugh. They made people think deeply about things that were important to people all over the world. No longer did people just want to laugh. They wanted humor with deeper meaning, something that made them think, and more than just one-liners and quick punchlines. As this wave of change hit the business world, Larry felt more and more like he didn't belong. He used to make jokes that seemed like they were written by the average man, but now they seemed out of place with the times. His jokes about small-town life, big trucks, and fake accents used to be very popular, but now they seemed out of place with the deeper, more socially aware stories that were becoming more popular. Larry wasn't just dealing with a change in his comedy taste. He was also thinking about a bigger question about his life. What did he do in a field that was changing without him? It wasn't just the humor that changed. He was also wondering where he fit in a new comic world that didn't seem to have room for his style of humor anymore. As a result, he felt cut off and confused about his place in a scene that had once welcomed him with open arms. Someone who had been on top of the world and sold out stadiums had to face the hard truth that he might no longer be in the center. With the rise of younger comics, Larry thought his chosen career as a comedian was less useful. But could a comic really lose fame because of the success of a co-worker? Or was the hype about his effect too strong from the start? What were his most important accomplishments when he was at the top of his game? Now, let's find the big name in comedy who stole the show. After getting gold albums and becoming a TV star, Larry the Cable Guy wasn't just any comic. He became a comedy powerhouse. There was a lot of amazing about his rise to fame. His first comedy record, Lord, I Apologize, did really well when it came out. It became a cultural phenomenon. After selling more than 500,000 copies, the record went gold and stayed at the top of the Billboard comedy charts for an amazing 15 weeks. This huge hit set the stage for his career and showed that Larry wasn't just a comic. He was going to be a comedy icon. Larry was successful in more ways than just making comedy records. Get Outdone, a DVD that became a great hit, was a big deal in the world of comedy specials. Larry was one of the best comedians of his time, and the special, which sold over 1 million copies, made him a silver record. But it wasn't just the sales that counted. It was his unique sense of humor, which came to life through his unforgettable redneck persona. People all over the country loved his one-of-a-kind style, which made him a familiar name in comedy. The part Larry played in Blue Collar TV, a sketch comedy show on the WB network, made him even more well-known. After its premiere on July 29, 2004, the show became a huge hit very quickly. It had a great mix of comedy, real-life humor, and sketches that people could relate to, which is why it got 5,400,000 watches in its first week. It wasn't just another big step in Larry's career when Blue Collar TV became a hit. It made him famous and new people who liked his straightforward, no-nonsense style. Blue Collar TV was the second most watched show during its peak, making it a major force in Hollywood comedy. Larry had really become a comedy giant, and not just in stand-up. He was famous in a lot of different types of humor. These achievements were the high points of Larry the Cable Guy's work. It was a time when he had a huge impact on many people and seemed to have an endless reach. During that time, Larry was on stage, TV, and everywhere else, making millions of people laugh and cry. Larry was one of the best comedians that every family could count on at the height of his career. But what could have made someone with so much ability run away? Was it something he could have dealt with and kept fighting, or were the problems just out of his hands? Let's find out what Larry the Cable Guy really goes through. A battle for survival. To most people, Larry the Cable Guy was a definition of comedy. He was loud, crazy, and memorable, and his motto, "Get outdone," became a part of popular culture. Fans liked the guy he played because he was honest, worked hard, and could always make them laugh. But Larry was secretly fighting a lot of personal demons that most people didn't see behind his larger-than-life image. Larry's health, both mentally and physically, was badly affected by the constant demands of traveling and the need to keep up his public image. He was fighting his own demons in the background while making millions of people laugh. He felt like he had no control over his life because of how often and badly his panic attacks happened. Larry was having a hard time with all of these problems, and his battle with addiction was getting worse over time. It looked like he was doing well, but the pressure was making him weak, and he was having a hard time keeping up with the expectations of fame. Larry's problem started with a scary event that happened on a TV set. He was in a terrible accident where a porta potty tipped over and caught him inside. He had serious post-traumatic stress disorder because of this scary event, and it kept coming back to haunt him long after it happened. When you add in the stress of having health problems like sleep apnea and joint pain, the emotional and mental scars from that day are very deep. Larry had been having a lot of problems since 2008, and they were slowly killing him. Being tired all the time became too much, and normal things became big problems. To make things even worse, Larry had to have surgery on his hip, which was a painful reminder that the fast-paced, demanding job he used to love wasn't going to work for him anymore. He had to face the hard truth. Something had to change because his body couldn't handle the life he had made for himself. The guy who used to love performing in front of big crowds had to take a step back and look at his life with a lot of care. He could no longer live the fast-paced life that made him popular, and he had to make the tough choice to slow down for his health's sake. Even the biggest stars have hard times behind the fame and laughs that the public never sees. His story is a strong reminder of this. What other reasons besides Larry's health that might have led him to leave the comic stage? Perhaps it was his own choice, or did the needs of those closest to him require him to leave while the crowd was still cheering? Let's find out the facts. The big moment for Larry the Cable Guy. When Larry the Cable Guy quit his successful comedy job, it wasn't just because he was having health problems. It was also a wake-up call about his family. Larry had been in the public eye for years, traveling non-stop and doing almost 300 shows a year. His job went through the roof, but it cost him a lot. He wasn't spending enough time with his kids and making the everyday memories that come with being a parent. Larry's wife, Kara, could see that his busy job was making their relationship worse. Through the years, their relationship began to weaken. They spent less and less time together, and their family life was falling apart. Kara knew something had to change because she had had enough. She gave Larry a tough choice. He could either change his life and focus on his family, or he could lose everything he cared about, including the family that meant the most to him. Could he decide that? Larry knew that his wife wasn't just making another request. She was giving him a hard but necessary wake-up call. He had put his work first for years, trying to get famous and successful. But as his health got worse and his family life fell apart, he had a strong realization. No amount of fame or success could make up for the priceless moments he was missing with his family. It wasn't just his health that made him decide to step back. It was also about protecting his family, which was much more important than the attention. For the first time in 15 years, Larry started to make big changes. In order to spend more time with his kids and enjoy the quiet life at their Nebraska ranch, he cut down on the number of shows he did by a huge amount. Living in peace and quiet, away from the constant traveling, became his safe place. Larry found a new balance and calm that he had been looking for all his life when he wasn't tied down by his job. This was a turning point in Larry's life. He learned that the things that made him truly happy were not the cheers of a packed stadium, but the laughter of his kids and the quiet times at home with his wife. He had to make a tough choice, but it gave him the peace he had been looking for a long time. Larry thought that spending more time with his family would be a good reason to stop doing stand-up comedy on stage. But could the cost of fame have been too much for him too? And what did going to all of those shows do for his fitness? Let's find out. The price of fame. Larry the Cable Guy was a huge star in comedy when he was at the top of his game. He was everywhere, from comedy clubs packed to the brim with adoring fans to the top of the comedy charts with his hit records. As the voice of the likable character Mater in Pixar's Cars movies, he became even more well-known. He was living the dream and enjoying the attention. Larry seemed to have it all. But there was a price he had to pay for all his fame and success that would affect him for the rest of his life. Larry's work was very successful, but it cost him a lot in other ways. He started to feel tired from all the traveling, shows, and pressure to keep up his larger-than-life image. He acted with a lot of energy every night, but the mental and physical stress got too much for him. A lot of people dream of fame and money, but it started to feel more like a trap. Larry was in a never-ending loop where he had to work harder to stay relevant at the cost of his health and happiness. It all got too much for him in the end, and he had to change the course of his life. As time went on, it was clear that the physical stress was getting worse. Larry's busy tour schedule and the stress of keeping up looks were hard on his body, and he started to gain too much weight. This caused him to have painful joint problems and sleep apnea, which made doing the things he loved feel like a tiring fight. Something that used to be exciting is now a daily battle. Larry was not only acting for his fans every time he went on stage, but he was also putting up with pain in his body. Larry started to feel like he was stuck in a life he couldn't continue, even though he was very successful and getting lots of praise. That same job that made him famous also made him tired, hurt, and feel like he was stuck all the time. He had done everything that most people only dream of, but at what cost? Larry finally understood that he couldn't keep going at the speed he had set for himself. He passed a point where the need for rest and the desire for a healthy life took precedence over the attention he used to enjoy. But could Larry ever be happy when he wasn't making people laugh? What would he do to get away from the stress of being famous? Let's find out. Finding peace outside the lights. Larry had a wake-up call. The constant traveling and stress of being in the spotlight weren't worth the damage they were doing to his family and health. There were too many sacrifices, and he knew something had to give. That's why he did something brave. He left the chaos of fame for his ranch in Nebraska, where he could finally focus on what was important. Larry was able to enjoy a calmer, more satisfying life when he moved away from the chaos of being famous. He could relax and think about what was most important to him on the ranch: his family, his health, and the chance to help other people. He had to make the hard but necessary choice to cut back on his work. He used to perform almost every night, but now he only does about 25 shows a year, which is a lot less. It was possible for him to spend more time with his kids and his wife, Kara, after this change, which his busy job had never let him do. A sense of satisfaction that Larry had never felt before came from the time he spent at home. He was able to live a life that felt more real and true to himself when he left the harsh expectations of the comedy world. Larry finally found the peace he had been looking for years in this new balance. He was no longer just a famous comedian with a catchphrase. He was a dad, a husband, and a father. He could finally enjoy the simple, everyday times with his family that he had missed while his career was in full swing. Thanks to Larry's desire to make a change, he gave back more. The businessman and his wife started the Get Outdone Foundation, a charity that helps a wide range of causes. Larry was able to use his fame for good in this new part of his life, helping others in important ways while staying true to his beliefs. Larry's organization gave him another way to help people outside of show business. He wanted to live a life that was not only about success for himself, but also about leaving a lasting mark on the world. Larry had to make the tough choice to stop doing the comedy shows that made him famous and start a charity that helps people. But will his reputation fade now that he's no longer doing comedies? Or is he working on a new project that will make sure it lasts forever? Let's start Larry's new journey now. Legacy and reinvention. Larry the Cable Guy may no longer be in the comedy spotlight, but his